Today, I am just outside of the beautiful Zion National Park here in Utah. And the park gets so much attention, and yet the communities that live in its shadow haven't really been focused on a whole lot from what I've seen. So today, I am going to be looking at three different communities just outside of Zion National Park. Right now, I am standing in the ghost town of Grafton, Utah, and we're going to be looking at Rockville and Springdale. As Mormon pioneers were colonizing the wild lands of Deseret in modern-day Utah, there was a push to use the southern part of the territory, sometimes called Utah's Dixie, for cotton farming, where all you needed was land flat enough to farm and enough water to be able to irrigate. The problem was that finding land that meets both of these criteria in Utah is not an easy thing to do. The communities along the Virgin River were some of the more successful communities to achieve this mission. Of the three communities I visited today, Grafton was the first to be settled in 1859. 5 families from the nearby settlement of Virgin moved 1 mile downstream from where Grafton sits today. In their first year, the little community was so focused on growing cotton that they hadn't grown enough food to feed their families. Obviously, change was needed if they wanted to survive, using all of their available land to grow both cotton and self-sustaining food crops. In 1862, a flood destroyed most of Grafton. It was so bad that people downstream wrote that entire houses, complete with their contents, were seen floating down the river. Following the flood, the residents of Grafton rebuilt, this time on higher ground, 1 mile upstream where the remnants of this old agricultural town site still sit today. At its peak, Grafton had over 150 residents living here, as people from Salt Lake City would move down to help in the efforts here. Grafton had many issues though, from problems maintaining irrigation ditches to multiple attacks from local native groups, which would lead to temporary abandonments of the area. By 1945, the last resident had left town, making Grafton officially a ghost town, as it still remains today. The remnants of Grafton are a fantastic example of early Mormon pioneering, the heart and grit of a community that worked to develop something where there was once nothing. Even though many of the town's buildings are now gone, there are multiple original buildings that you can still look at, and some that you can even walk through still today, including the church and schoolhouse and the Alonzo Russell home, which is one of the fanciest residential structures still standing. With cows in the fields beside these ruins, it's not hard to picture the agricultural past that happened here, as the agriculture in some fashion still continues here today. In 1862, Rockville, only a short drive down the road from Grafton, was settled. Named for the boulders that had broken off the hills that outlined the town site, Rockville was also developed for agricultural purposes, as the little community follows along the banks of the Virgin River. Rockville, despite being on the road directly into Zion National Park, seems to have rejected the push toward tourism and hospitality industries that nearby Springdale has seemed to embrace. Rockville still feels like a sleepy little settlement, a group of local citizens that are there to serve and help each other, not at the exclusion of the outside world, but rather just that not much is offered here for the outside world. One of Rockville's most well-known icons is the 1-lane, 217-foot Parker Through Truss Bridge that crosses the river, the only bridge of its kind in Utah. Built in 1924, this bridge created a connection between southern Utah and the north rim of the Grand Canyon, creating a means of transportation for tourists to move between Arizona and Zion. In 1995, the bridge was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Rockville is sometimes referred to as the last treasure in Utah. To me, this quaint little community of less than 300 has a special feel, with its tree-lined roads and old-world feel, but I don't know that I necessarily think that it's somewhere that I would want to live, as Rockville really doesn't have anything in terms of infrastructure. Residents need to travel to nearby towns or cities to get everyday supplies and food, with no significant stores, gas, or restaurants directly in Rockville. About 2 miles to the east of Rockville lies the town of Springdale. With a whopping population of 595 people, this is the largest community of the three that I am visiting for the purposes of this video. Springdale, just like Grafton and Rockville, was colonized to be a cotton farming community. When you look at the mountains and cliffs that surround the town, you could wonder how anyone would look at this land and think that it was ideal for farmland, as opposed to merely existing to serve as a natural wonder to its onlookers, which would be my inclination. However, the need for cotton crops in the Mormon mission network led to the settlement of this area in the fall of 1862. Rumor has it that the town was named by the wife of one of the original settlers when she saw springs near the site of where their house would be built. Ironically, Springdale was originally much smaller than Rockville and relied on the church, post office, shopping, and other resources found in Rockville. However, today that has become flipped, as the residents of Rockville now rely on the more developed offerings of Springdale. Things would remain like this with the sleepy little Mormon community until the early 1900s, when roads had improved enough that the area started to see its first automobiles. Since the area was now more accessible than ever, people from as far away as Salt Lake City and beyond would come and camp here, changing the industry of Springdale forever, from a self-sufficient agricultural town to a busy tourist attraction, with the founding of a national monument here in 1919, which would later become Zion National Park. Electricity, gasoline, stores, and tourist camps were popping up here quicker than could have been imagined. Today, modern hotels, restaurants, and gift shops have replaced the original pioneering structures. The small town of under 600 people is overrun with an estimated 3 million tourists seeking high-demand parking spots, a good meal, and a room to sleep in as they explore the natural beauty just outside in nearby Zion. We'll see you next time, somewhere else down the road.